This is One Voice Makes a Difference podcast. I pray that today one voice will be a blessing to you. And above all else, I pray that God's voice will be heard among this God's story. Enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to One Voice Makes a Difference podcast. I'm so glad that you joined us today, and I am super excited because I have a guest with us today. His name is Tommy Redfearn, and I got to tell you guys how I met him. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into this podcast, this conversation. I came out of the daily grind one day, and my back was hurting, my neck was hurting, and I saw this number. It said medical massage, and I said, you know what? I'm going to give that number a call. And I called, and this dude here, Tommy Redfearn, he answers the phone. And he was like, I was like, I think I need to make an appointment. And he said, well, tell me a little bit, about yourself. And I said, well, my son's been in the hospital for a couple of months, and I've been sleeping in a chair in the hospital, and my neck is all out of whack and it hurts. And I said, I think I just need some knots moved around or something like that. And he was like, really? Your son was in the hospital? He said, my wife would know how you feel right now because he had been through the same thing. And to make a long story short, I found out that he has a similar story as our story with our son, Rhett. As you guys, you've been following us, you know that we did, maybe 2 months of podcast with people just bringing recognition to ileostomy, colonoscopies, or not colonoscopies, but colostomy bags, ileostomy bags, colon cancer, and ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, all of that. So today I want to introduce to you my very special friend that I really have only known for maybe a couple of months now. And I'm just so inspired by his story because even on the phone, we just opened up a conversation. We began to talk. And I'm so inspired by his story. And I can't wait for you to hear his story too. So I welcome Tommy Redfearn. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, this podcast is all about giving people a platform to tell their stories and to bring glory to God through their stories. And when I first met you, that's one of the things I could sense about you, that I knew that you loved the Lord, but you put your faith in God through all of the things that you have been through. So tell our audience a little bit about you, your background, where you come from, and then we're going to get into your diagnosis when you were diagnosed with colon cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I grew up in a military family. We got to live all over. I was actually born in Australia. Didn't stay long enough to get an accent. So just a short time there. And then I actually lived in Germany and in the States by the time I was 5. So we moved around a whole bunch. Which was kind of cool in its own way. But so I was also the youngest. So I was of 2 older brothers. So we were always wrestling and playing tough and rough and all that sort of stuff. And I remember we were stationed in Germany in Ansbach. I think I was about 11. And I really liked watching WWE, and to watch the WWE on one of the 3 channels we had in Germany while my dad was home, he'd be like, okay, you can watch whatever you want as long as you, if you can work on my neck. So I actually was putting elbow in his neck and working on him at an early age like that, just to try to help him out. He was a pilot, helicopter pilot. So wow. He stayed pretty stiff and tight, but that kind of prepped me for what I do now, which is medical massage. And so I did that. My brothers, they gave me heck growing up, and so that kind of made me tough too. So then I got into martial arts and the healing arts when I turned 18 there, fairly seriously. So it's a style of jiu-jitsu. It's a Japanese style, Danzanryu jiu-jitsu. And then the healing art side of that is Seifuku jitsu, which translates as restoration and alignment techniques. So if you're going to be doing martial arts for any amount of time, you're going to get hurt and injured eventually. So you're going to need to learn how to fix that. So much like Mr. Miyagi is coming over and fixing up the Karate Kid, that's how I learned massage. So if somebody got slammed and they got their shoulder dislocated, Sensei, you had a lesson on how to put a shoulder back in the socket, ankles, knees. So that's kind of what got me started going on it. I actually graduated with a degree in chemistry from UGA in 2005, but my massage instructor offered me a scholarship to go to his massage school. And so I took him up on that. And so I thought, I'd have my own dojo one day and do some massage on the side until I get there. And it turns out I have a massage business and I do martial arts on the side. So, but that's all right. And that's also how I met my wife. So I went away to college. I came back and she was there working out with her mom, doing martial arts. And so, so multiple good things have kind of come from there. But, I think the main thing is trying to get your body to be healthy, and especially if you're going to demand stuff from it all the time, is having some good exercise, having a good diet, and those sorts of things. And I got to really kind of focus on those.
Right.
I think a lot of people get caught up in careers and stuff like that now, and they're, eating McDonald's because it's quick and doing some of those things. So I think I was very fortunate that I was able to focus on some things that would then continue to help me as I had more ailments as time went on too.
That's so good. And I love the fact that you are into healing also, like the body. And we were talking about this before. The body, I feel like, responds to what's happening in our environment. Physically, of course, it will respond to that. But I think so much of it too is through our spirit and our soul, and then our body comes in alignment. So I think there comes a time where, like you said, finding that alignment in your body, but also there has to be an alignment in your spirit and your soul, that you got to bring everything back into alignment, because it's so easy for your thoughts to be scattered, for your spirit to be scattered. And Tommy, I've seen through this pandemic that people are scattered everywhere now. And we're doing so much, trying so hard just to bring people back together and to bring everything back in alignment. And let's get down to what's really important, the important things. So, you guys that are listening, what's important about getting things in alignment is about bringing your spirit, your soul, and your body into a place of balance, where you can operate and you can be healthy, because it's God's will for us to be healthy. We're never going to be perfect. You're never going to have a perfect marriage. You're never going to have a perfect church. You're never going to have a perfect family. But the one thing that I've learned is the word that I love to use instead of good or perfect is healthy, because what's healthy grows. So if I have a healthy marriage, then my marriage can grow. If I have a healthy body, then my body I can grow old gracefully, right? I can't prevent from growing old, but I can be healthy as I get older. And if my emotions are healthy, then, that dictates everything, doesn't it? Like wherever your emotions are. And if that's out of balance, I can throw everything out of balance. So, when I met you, I could tell that you were really, I was just really touched by your life story and some of the things that happened to you. So I know that you broke your back, right? So tell us a little bit about how that happened.
Sure. So this was 2012. I got married in May, and then in June, the very next month, I was helping a friend doing a roofing project. It was a metal roof, putting metal sealant on it, and that stuff is super, super slick. And so I was going to come off, and where I had the bucket, some of my sealant had dripped, and when it dries, it just looks like the roof. And when it's going on, you can tell that it's fresh. And so, but I was right there, and I stepped in it, and I slipped, and I started going slip and slide face first off the roof. This is probably it's a tall old Victorian house. This was the tallest part of the second story. Wow. So it's probably like 25 to 30 feet up in the air. And so I went slip and slide off. I was able to get my arm into the gutter and not go off head first and turn around and I started falling backwards. And so I landed on this lower left side. So I broke L1, 2, 3, and 4 in 6 different places. Wow. All those transverse processes broke. L2 and 4 had compression fractures. I deflated my left lung. I was unconscious out there for a time. I don't know how long, but a while. It was a busy weekend down there. there and my lung was deflated. So I was yelling for help. I could see people, but I didn't have enough air to even say anything. But coincidentally, before I went up there over the apartment I was working on, I told the lady whose apartment was, hey, if you hear anybody screaming out there, it's me. I fell off the roof. Come and get me. And sure enough, she heard me eventually. And
you said that before?
I did.
Wow.
Never
said that again.
Don't put it out there.
Yeah,
You don't want to. So she came and found me, and actually my instructor said angels must have set me down. There was an outdoor AC unit, horizontal fence, and a vertical fence, and I landed just enough room for a person, bent up to really land in about like maybe a 4x4 little spot.
Oh my gosh.
That I missed all of those obstacles out there, which would have been just way worse.
Yes.
If anything would have happened like that. But yeah, so I spent a week or so in Memorial Hospital to give me a body cast, and I went and had to spend the next 2 months laid up in the bed.
Wow. So how did that make you feel? Because I think sometimes we can get our identity in the things that we do. And when that's taken away from you, because now you're laid up in the hospital, you're in this body cast, and no longer can you do martial arts in this very moment. So
and
emotionally,
maybe never, mentally, it's like,
mentally, like, how did you deal with that mentally? Because it was more than a loss physically. There was more going on, and it was very traumatic. Oh yeah. So how did you deal with all that?
Well, it was hard. I won't say I dealt with it the best way immediately. Yeah. But eventually, I found myself just on my knees and just pleading for the Lord. Like, obviously what I'm doing is not working. So whatever you want me to do, that's what I want to do. And so I kind of quit trying to live for myself so much and try to say, okay, which path do you want me on, Lord? And so that's really where I had to kind of get to. And I was depressed for a little while. It was a good 6 months of, walking again and getting all of your energy and stamina back up. So it was a good 6 months before I ever went back to work, even part-time. And so, yeah, it was interesting, but really just breaking down and just being like, okay, well, I physically now can't do anything. I had to have, my brother-in-law had to help me up to use the bathroom. And so really being humbled to that extent really gave me a different idea of, okay, well, I'm still here. I've got a wife, and I've got a family that loves me. So, where can I be better off? And I didn't know. So I just had to leave it in God's hands. And he eventually put all the pieces back together for me. And, we started having a family and having kids, and everything has kind of come around here, which then led me to having the colon cancer. So round two of being taken down again. But yeah, so that's really kind of what happened there. Is got depressed for a bit, and then it's like, okay, well, now I got to come back. I got to make. So
what you did is you got your soul back in alignment, because it's really easy that when you experience trauma, it just takes the life out of you for a minute, and it takes a minute to get everything back in order. So we just want to encourage someone that's listening right now. Maybe you've been through something traumatic, or maybe the doctor has said something to you and diagnosed you with something, or maybe you're a family member, or maybe you just run upon bad times. I'm going to tell you, hard times do not come to stay, but they come to pass. And, the Lord knows that, and Tommy and I were talking about this too, that sometimes when we go through things, it's so we can be refined. The Lord is refining us. He's not making us go through things to teach us a lesson. I want us to understand that first of all. God can teach you lessons anyway through life, but He's not making you go through stuff in order for you to learn something. But He does take what the enemy means for harm, and He turns it around, and we do learn something through the trials that we go through. I'm going to tell you, I'm a different person. I'm not the same person I was a few years ago. Even I look back 5 years ago, and I'm constantly growing with God. And I know a little bit more than I did 5 years ago, Not because I'm older. It's because I've submitted my life to God. And like you, at that moment, I'm okay, God, I've tried doing this my way. I think I'm going to let you have your way with my life now. It's not working what I'm doing.
Right.
But, I'm reminded of the book of Habakkuk. He was a minor prophet in the Old Testament. And he was on hard times, and he was a prophet. And he says at the very end of it, he says, Lord, everything's going wrong in my life right now, but I know you're a God of vision, you're a God of promises, and I know you're going to keep your promises. But I'm going to praise you in the midst of pain. I'm going to praise you even though the barns are empty, my bank account is empty. It looks like my life is falling apart. You're God of your word, and you're going to do what you said you're going to do. And now I'm in the position where I have no choice but to trust you. I don't like being down and depressed. I don't like that feeling. Okay. And it's too heavy. I've decided just to trust you with my life. So you were starting to have symptoms, and your wife noticed that, but you were thinking it was because of the accident, because trauma can cause all kinds of things to go off in your body, right? Like your colon and so forth. So what were you thinking that was wrong versus what was really wrong?
Yeah. So then going forward in that time, I tore a hernia, hiatal hernia there. And when and that L4 is where the nerve comes around that goes to your bladder and some to your intestines. So my thought, and I didn't, wasn't proven by the doctor or anything like that, but was that I had a little bit of nerve damage there. So now, my guts quit working for a time while I was in the hospital, and I mean they came back, but kind of ever since that accident there. Just my going to the bathroom habits changed. And so I was having acid reflux and from the hernia, and I also was not eating the best either at that time. So that's part of, I think diet and nutrition is a big part of life as well. But I was having that sort of stuff go on, and then just irregularity with my bowels going between like constipation and diarrhea, and just kind of switching all the time, and things like that. So but I just kind of chalked it all up to that. My wife is a registered nurse, and she was working in the endoscopy unit at the hospital. And she started to point stuff out to me, and she's like, this isn't normal. You need to get this checked. And I'm like, nah, I'm fine,
like all men say.
and so eventually the acid reflux got and I started having trouble swallowing too. And so I was like, okay, well let's go and see something about it. And I told the doctor everything that was going on. But insurance being the way that it is, I wasn't bleeding and I wasn't losing weight. So they did not want to do the colonoscopy at that time. Now, if I would have hammered on it, like my wife wanted me to, it probably could have been done. And I wish I would have.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have. I truly.
How old were you then?
So this would be 2017. So I would be 35-ish.
Okay.
And so, not too old, but not where the check engine light's supposed to be on yet.
Exactly.
But yeah, I wish I would have done more. And so the main thing I would like to say here is pain is your body talking to you. Pain is a good thing. That is your body talking to you. Now it's when we ignore it, then it'll go from a whisper to a loud talk to a shout. And when your body starts shouting at you, you're gonna listen. You're gonna have no choice. And the problem is by that time, now it's gotten to a worse problem as well. So I think that's kind of all part of what was going on with me. So that was 2017. So they did the scope, and they checked it out. He was like, yeah, you got more inflammation in there than I thought you would have had. And so, but that was kind of about it. So we just kind of let that ride. And I mean, I checked back with the doctor and I changed some things around. But ultimately it kept on going forward. And then, over the next couple years here, I started having more abdominal pain. I started to have more bleeding when using the bathroom. And so, and the doctor's like, oh, it's probably just a hemorrhoid. Oh, you're fine. If you're sitting too long, you're just a hemorrhoid. And it's like, well, that's one possibility, but there are several other possibilities. So anyway, so then again with my wife in my corner there, I went back to the doctor and told him. And so now I had blood in my stool. And then now almost every morning I woke up, it was like a bolt of lightning would hit me in the stomach. I mean, it would literally drop me to the ground. So if I was walking, and just that quick, and then it was gone.
Wow.
But I was like, okay, I've got to get something and get checked. And actually, my wife's stepfather passed away of cancer, and he was having a similar situation where he'd be driving through Atlanta and he would have to pull the car over and stop because his stomach would be hurting so bad. And that story in my head is really what was like, okay,
wow,
let's go get checked.
Right.
And so we did. And immediately, as soon as I did the colonoscopy, waking up from anesthesia, the doctor didn't wait for the biopsy to come back or anything. He's like, yeah, you have cancer. And so,
oh my gosh, just like that.
Yeah. It was terrible.
How did that make you feel? Like,
well, and I told.
Would you rather someone just tell you or just ease into the conversation?
No, I'm kind of the person like just let me just give it to me.
Give it to me.
Give it to me
like it is.
Give it to me straight, and then I'll process.
I'm
it,
like that too. Just tell me. Don't hide it. Just tell me.
No, I don't even
care how you tell me. Just tell me the truth.
Right. And then but then give me a little time.
Yeah, give me some time to deal with it. But
so that was rough. And I had told my wife before we went. I mean, as much pain as I was having, those lightning bolts and everything, I was like, what if I have cancer? And so then I did. And so this was on a Friday. I met with the surgeon on Monday, and I was in surgery on Wednesday.
Wow.
So they really moved fast there.
Yeah.
And I felt good about the surgeon. He had done martial arts, the same style that I was training at the time, Wing Chun. And so I felt good about him. He actually was just coming to the area. He was kind of semi-retiring from New York, and he was a oncologist surgeon. So all those things kind of came together. And my general opinion was, well, if that's what's in there and we can cut this out, let's get it out of there. I had other friends talk about doing more holistic natural stuff and going to a place in Mexico and, for 6 months and all this sort of stuff. And I just thought, I don't want to live the rest of my life thinking, well, what if it's coming back?
Yeah.
Well, what if it's coming back?
Yes.
And
I'm with you.
I think we actually caught it in stage 1. I mean, they actually scared me. So they were like, we think you're stage 2, stage 3, so you might have to do some chemo and stuff. Anyway, so he went in, did the colectomy, and took some other parts while I was in there too. It was supposed to be like a 2-hour thing. It was like 6 hours in surgery. And so I was not happy with him when I woke up, but anyway.
Yeah, I bet.
That's not what we talked about.
Yeah.
But so it was stage 1. So all the lymph nodes that they took out, like 34, all came back clear. And so so they said stage 1. So that was huge.
Yes. So no chemo then.
No chemo, no radiation. And I think that only goes to support that if you feel like something's going on, go get that checked.
Yeah.
The sooner you can get something like that, and especially if it's cancer, if you can get it and cut it out, then you're pretty much done with it.
Yeah.
If you catch it early.
If you catch it early.
I
think it's important to, like you said, listen to what your body is saying. And then, respond to it. Don't react, because a lot of people react like, oh, well, I'll take this, or I'll, make sure I start eating healthy, and then maybe that will cure me. And sometimes it does. But sometimes, like even with my son, we tried every diet under the sun. We tried everything. He tried fasting. We tried organic. We read every book. People still giving us books when we, after 12 years and he had his colon taken out, people still giving us books. And I'm like, and I know they mean well. I do. I know they mean well.
Right.
But we did everything. If there was information, I Googled everything. I've spent thousands of dollars trying to make it right. But this was what had to be done. And he has felt the best he has ever felt.
Yeah.
Like, as a matter of fact, right now, he is on his way to Fort Lauderdale to have his appointment to schedule his second surgery.
Okay.
And so we're excited about his future. And the thing is, he has a future now, because when you have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, the chances of you having colon cancer are
way up there.
Way up there, way up there. And he was, 24 when he had all this done, so he went ahead and had it taken out. He's living a great life. The thing is, if you go ahead and respond and instead of fighting it, like reacting like, okay, I don't want this, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to do this, and I'm going to wait, because so many people right now are waiting and they're like, oh, well, this is a side effect of COVID. And they think that's what it is. We have a friend right now that for a year, he lost his taste and his smell, and he thought it was a side effect of COVID.
Yeah.
Guess what?
No.
It wasn't. It wasn't until a friend helped him up out of a chair and it broke his arm. And he ended up he had cancer the whole time. Yes. We thought, he had been losing weight because he thought that this is because of I've lost my taste and smell, and this is what COVID did. But you guys, we got to stop blaming everything on COVID.
Right.
I mean, we live in a fallen world, and there's things that can happen to our bodies. We need to be proactive, right? And stay one step ahead.
And I think, we live in an interesting time where we've got so much medical knowledge base to go off of. So the other thing that's happened here since my surgery is I have hemochromatosis, which is a red blood cell mutation problem where my body absorbs too much iron. And so okay, and then my grandfather died early of a massive heart attack, and it could have been from that same sort of genetic blood test. So our genetic blood problem. And if I'd had that test earlier, maybe I would have known. Maybe I could have done something about it a little bit sooner. You can kind of start to change your diet, start to do some other things that might have been better for it. But one thing I found out through there is that cancer eats iron. And so you're talking about with your friend broke his arm. That cancer's in there taking your nutrients from you and burning up your stuff. Well, I had high iron. Well, I didn't test high for iron, probably because cancer was in there eating it all. So interesting how those things can kind of come together. But you don't know what's happening in your family. Go 2 generations back, they didn't have any idea about these sorts of things. And so what we do now, and I was listening to another doctor here yesterday, and that's what he was recommending. There's certain things that you could go and test in your 20s. It'd be one time, and then you would know, do I have this or do I not? And that can make a big difference if you're, 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, if you've been planning for it, or now it's just going to hit you like a freight truck. And now you've got a bunch of problems, So I think going out there and getting things checked out and see what's going on is definitely, first in my mind now.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk a minute about when you were diagnosed with cancer, because I know that when that word is mentioned, there's a lot of things that can happen in your soul, a lot of thoughts that could take place. Was there like a scripture or something that you really stood on that helped bring you back into a balance or back into alignment, as we could say?
Well, yeah. So I think it was pretty much that Psalms 23, 1 through 6 there, where as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And so to me at that time, that cancer diagnosis was just really that sort of dark valley of death. But knowing that God was with me and my family was with me, and that really helped me to be strong. And they say having a positive attitude going into the cancer treatments and everything like that really has a big impact. And so I think if you let those negative thoughts take over, it can make it worse on your body. But if you can try to stay positive, and by that point, I had both my kids and were alive and everything like that too. And I remember trying to tell my kids, I was on the fence for how much do you want to say to your kids about your cancer diagnosis, right? But I was having a sappy moment, and I was like, Daddy's got to go in and have a bad part cut out. And there's a chance, I may not make it. And I was like, but I want you guys to know I love you and everything like that. And my son just looked at me and didn't miss a beat. He's like, yeah, Dad, well, if you die, you're just going to go to be with God.
I love it.
I was like,
out of the mouth of babes.
but that it did help me. I was like, I wish I could be as as faithful as he was. But he was just believing. And anyway, those sorts of things really kind of helped me to stay motivated. And then once I came out of the surgery and they said they got it all, I was like, okay, we can handle this. Although, the negative thoughts still creep back in there, and you got to keep warding those off. But I think that's the main sort of thing, is trying to stay positive, trying to have a direction and know that it's a good direction.
That's so good. I love that. And, one of the scriptures that come to my mind right now too is that we are in such warfare, and the enemy he paints a picture of fear for us.
Yes.
And when you have a diagnosis, or you've experienced trauma, or you're going through the deepest, darkest valley, the shadow of death, the enemy would want to paint a picture for you, and he'll show you the end. And I remember for us, the picture that the enemy painted for me was that I remember one night I woke up, and my son, he had been in the hospital and so sick and near death. And this has been like 3 years ago. This was his first round of almost dying. And we've been through so much with him. And I know a lot of you guys that are listening out there, a lot of you have walked through this too. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But the enemy, he painted a picture for me, and I could see like this huge shadow just taking his bones and throwing them in a grave. And I was in this grave, and I was catching them, and I was pulling them back out, and I was saying, no, no, no. And I woke up because I think it was a dream that I was having, and my husband was beside me, and he said, Janet, have another thought. And this was in the middle, like 3:00 in the morning. And then immediately I felt the Holy Spirit come upon my thought pattern, and I could see him married. I could see him having children. I saw another picture. And see, the message I really want to get to you guys today is, like, when you have a diagnosis, or when, the enemy comes in like a flood, and he paints this picture for you, the worst case scenario, it's time to stop and think about what you're thinking about for a minute and switch. Just switch your thoughts and think of something different, and let faith paint a picture for you, because fear is painting a picture for you. And now you need to let faith paint this picture for you. And faith wins every time, because faith will overpower fear. You can't let the fear overpower faith. And it's just one thought away. It's one decision away that you just wake up and you say, you know what? I'm going to believe the best about this. You're going to feel so much better by doing that. And you're going to feel faith arising, and your life will follow what you think and what you are constantly dwelling on. So make sure that your thoughts are healthy. The Bible says that we're to take every thought, every 169,000 thoughts we have a day, take them into captivity and make it come into obedience with the word of God. So when we take those thoughts, and I know that, when you're diagnosed with cancer, or you're diagnosed with something else, or you get bad news, or it could be anything, the enemy will take advantage of that traumatic experience and begin to plant seeds of negativity, or the worst case scenario. Like I said, paint that picture for you. But today I'm praying that through Tommy's story, that you could see a picture of faith, and that God will, and that you'll be inspired by this God story, and that you'll be inspired to, think about what you're thinking about. No matter what your circumstances say, no matter what the diagnosis has been, no matter what the trauma has been, God is greater than all of those things that you've been through. All right. So, think the best, but practical, Tommy, this is spiritual. We gave the spiritual advice. Practically, what advice do you give people that, especially between, I think, the ages of 30 and 50, to be proactive in their health?
Sure. Well, I just want to say one thing before that too. So I think that that mind, body, spirit connection is really big. And so as you are having that faith and pumping that into your mind, as that gets into that subconscious, it gets into the body too.
Yes.
So I think that there's definitely some correlation between those. So having good thoughts and having that faith and keeping them focused on good things, I would say would be very important as well. The other thing then is talking about nutrition and food. So for me, after looking into a lot of this stuff, everybody, like you said, with your son, everybody wants to kind of come with a book and help. And so, but a lot of vegetarians don't have colon cancer. Like, excuse me, I think colon cancer is like 1 in 5 or 6 for meat eaters. And for vegetarians, it's like non-existent. Almost. Wow. Now that doesn't mean that doesn't happen. I mean, there's other, you could have other genetic issues and things like that. But so checking that diet. I think if you are eating a lot of meat and potatoes, bread, meats, and combining foods in such a way where you're getting and sugar, so much sugar today. When you're putting these things into your body, they are keeping the inflammation in there. And one thing that I'm learning about now is how inflammation actually, it prevents your cells from having like hormones stick to them. So your cells got the little receptors, got the little parking spot, and that hormone's supposed to come up there. When you've got inflammation in the body, it's like it can't get into its parking spot. So not that your body quits making hormones, but your body will have a harder time processing them and getting them where they need to be when inflammation is high. Wow. And one of the biggest inflammation things today is sugar. Okay, sugar and carbs. All right, we just have way too much of them. They're delicious, and
I love them.
I love my carbs. I love some chocolate, but really cutting back on that stuff, and doing some fasting. Fasting is a tremendous way to lower inflammation and to try to reset those hormones. Decreasing your carbs decreases that inflammation. Alcohol is going to increase inflammation. So to me, it's not so much of a specific diet plan that you have to be so regimented on and get super focused on that. But just some ideas of, okay, what is causing inflammation in my body? Now, how can I start to reduce it? Yeah. And the first one is just look at sugar. Okay, that's the first one. Then you can talk about carbs, and then you can talk about meat. And to me, and some of the studies that I've read here, eating a bunch of meat and then eating something else on top of it, like sugar and stuff, that sugar can start to ferment in your gut with that meat in there, so you'll get other bad side effects from it. So just having meat, like there's a carnivore diet out there where you're only going to eat meat. Those things I don't think are bad necessarily by themselves, but certain food combinations can be worse. Yeah. And it has to do with the sugars and the carbs when you start mixing those with things. And so I think anytime that you're going to be trying to look at disease processes and stuff like that, if you can get the inflammation down, it's amazing what your body can do. God made the most intelligent, sophisticated piece of equipment in the world is this body. It does a million things a day without you even thinking about them, fixes itself, rebuilds itself, and you got to get the other junk out of the way so it can do its job. Wow. And to me, that's one of the main things I try to do. That's what I try to talk about with my kids. I mean, they still have candy. It's not that we don't do that, but eating a pound of candy but then going straight to bed, I mean, that's not the best idea. Yeah. And then also those food combinations in there a little bit too. So to me, that's the best thing. So that exercise is going to be raising your energy levels up and giving you that basis. And then your diet is what's going to help really kind of maintain that for you.
That is so good. And, it takes discipline to do all those things.
Absolutely.
And so maybe we should just start praying over, if me, of course, I pray over me. I need all the discipline I can get, but I try really hard to discipline myself not to overeat or not to eat too much sugar. I don't deny myself sugar, but I don't eat it all day long and every day. Right. And like I have to have this every day. But one thing that I have noticed when I get stressed out, I want chocolate. Yeah. And so I have found that if I do that, I start feeling stoved up more, like I'm feeling more inflammation in my body and I feel worse. So I need to find another way to handle stress instead of eating chocolate. And my other way of handling stress is going for a walk.
There you go.
I mean, a brisk walk, and that makes me feel better. So, you need discipline in your life. I think one of the most powerful things that Jesus did is he chose disciples. And out of those disciples, that word disciples, it comes from the word discipline. So we are all disciples of Jesus. So we have to have a certain discipline about ourselves so that we could stay healthy. Now, listen, you guys, Jesus said this, I've come to give you life and to give you an abundant life. That word abundant doesn't mean, I'm going to give you a rich life full of money and your bank account is always full and that you're never going to have problems. No, it means the word abundant literally means I've come to give you a full life, a whole life with wholeness, with the word healing and health in that. So what Jesus was saying to us, I want you to live a balanced life. I want you to live a healthy life. I want you to be whole in your spirit, your soul, and your body. So today we want to pray over you. And thank you so much, Tommy, for coming and sharing your story. I am so inspired. And listen, before we pray over you, I want to tell you, when I went to Tommy and he started working on my neck, he's doing all it's not just massage. I mean, I don't know what he is doing, but he is stretching my neck. It's a medical massage. You will feel so much better. If you have stress and you're holding stress in your shoulders or in your neck, one visit, just 30 minutes with Tommy will change your life. You will feel so much better after that. And then he gives you all kind of little things that you can do with a tennis ball, a couple of tennis balls that will help you out. So if people want to come and see you, you're here in Statesboro, right?
We have a location in Statesboro and Metter.
Okay. And you and your wife do this together?
We do.
Okay.
We do. We've had some other therapists kind of come and go through the years, but it's just us right now. Pretty much, 5 days a week. We work a couple Saturdays a month as well. We're pretty much by appointment only. So they could just check out longlifemedicalmassage.com and get our information there and kind of go from there.
Is that how they make the appointment with you, is through that website?
The website or my phone number that's on the website there too. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I'll put all those in the show notes for you. If you're interested and you want to get that done and you want to even know more about health and eating, And
then I'd like to say just one more thing. So, and then I think the other thing is just the fellowship. Yeah. So reaching out to somebody, if something is going on, you just shove it in deep down, not talking about it. I don't think that that's what God wants us to do either.
That's right.
With getting the disciples, getting the community and getting people around you that might know something you don't, or had an experience that might be able to translate to help you. So talk. Get it out there. Put it out there to your friends, to your families, to medical professionals, somebody.
Yes.
But I think too much today we pack things in, and I think that we're meant to have that fellowship.
That's right. That is so true. I'm a big advocate for that, because when you hold things in, I think it just holds in a lot of anger when we do that, or even just depression and chaos on the inside of us because we don't know what to do. But it takes a lot of humility too, just to reach out and let people know what you're going through. So don't be afraid, because we're all going through something. You're not alone. You're not by yourself. I want you to know we're all going through something. So give Tommy here a call. And what's your wife's name?
Candace.
Give Candace a call. They will help you out. They'll help you feel so much better, just like they did me. But again, I'm just so inspired by your story. Thank you so much for telling your story. So we're going to pray over you. Tommy, would you like to pray over our listeners today?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Oh, Lord, thank you for this time here together. Lord, I just pray that the story will go out and reach somebody's ear who might need to hear this story. Lord, please work with people to help to heal them physically, mentally, and spiritually. And please, oh Lord, put people in their path that would enrich their lives and become stronger together.
Yes.
In Jesus' name I pray.
Yes. Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Listen, we give God all the glory for what he is doing. And if you have a great testimony and you have a story you want to share with me, I'd love to hear from you. All right. Reach out to me at janetswansonministries@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And I would love for you to share this podcast with a friend if it's ministered to you today. All right. Until next week, I'll see you then. Bye. Thank you for listening to One Voice Makes a Difference. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing and reviewing the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Tell your friends about One Voice too. Your voice helps the show reach more people and to spread the gospel. If you'd like to hear more about my personal story, you can purchase my book, One Voice, on my website, www.janetswanson.org. or on Amazon and audible.com. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube. Most importantly, if you're in a crisis, please call 24/7 Crisis Hotline at 1-800-273-8255 or visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Don't wait, your life matters.